Hello and welcome to the third episode of White Dove Works. My name is Adrian, and today I'm going to show you how I made a wooden mallet. And there's also some carving involved. I'm setting up my bench with my bench hook and securing it tightly. This is a piece of cherry. We will use this for the head of the mallet. The first step is to square it up so that I can precisely lay out where my mortise will go into. Some beautiful cherry shavings here. I really enjoy the smell of cherry while planing it. I'm laying out the rough dimensions of the head and then also precisely marking the mortise. It's inconvenient to use a marking gauge for this because it will give you parallel lines with equal distance. And we're ready to go, starting to chop our mortise. Don't be fooled by how fast this looks. It's actually 8 times faster than in reality. But it is sort of a meditation, because you're working very slowly and with all these small increments, but steadily. And it's such a repetitive motion that you can really let your mind wander. I will not show the whole process of chopping the mortise because after some time it gets boring, but these were the last few strokes that I did, and then I went through, and I was quite happy with how it turned out. Still needs some cleanup, but in the end this is a pretty cool mortise. I think it was the 3rd or 4th that I cut. So on to the handle. I'm using some walnut here. And also the first step again is square it up so that we can put some reliable marks on there. Here I'm measuring the dimensions of my mortise, transferring these measures to my marking gauge, and then marking the dimensions of my handle. The next step then is to establish sort of a curving in there. I'm using a fine back saw to do this. This will help guide my Ryobi saw to make a very straight cut, which requires less planing afterwards. And this is what you can see me doing here. I'm using the Ryobi saw to cut all the way through the wood. Here we go. Not perfect, but some planing and then it's done. This step shows cutting the slots for the wedges. So I'm cutting down. There will be 2 wedges there. And then in the end of these slots, I will drill a hole to prevent them from splitting the wood even further. Because I do not want any splits in my handle when driving the wedges in there. Just to make sure. So, you might have guessed it. Now it's time for the carving. And what I did here is I used a method that I've seen first with Wood by Wright. He just cuts out a paper template, glues it onto the wood, and then uses these lines to make very precise carvings. And it's actually a very easy way to do it. This was my first attempt in carving, and you will see how it turned out, but I'm pretty happy. So basically, the first thing to do is take a knife and a ruler and pre-cut all the lines. Then take a small chisel, because I do not have any dedicated carving tools, and Use this small chisel then to remove the waste. This is a 6mm chisel. It was actually the smallest that I had, but for future projects I might get a 3mm, which would make it a lot easier, especially when you're doing curves. Now this shows me working twice as fast as in reality, just for you to see the process. And then later I will change it to 5 times as fast. So yeah, this step was by far the one that took the most effort and time, but it was definitely worth it. And on to the second square. Remove all of the material. Now this was by far the trickiest part. These curves aren't easy to cut with a 6mm chisel, and I went back and forth between the chisel and the knife, and chisel and knife, chisel and knife, and then sort of got the hang of it. Doing work like this really calms my mind, because it's always sort of the same thing, and parts of you are so concentrated on the task, while other parts of your mind can just wander around. Here I'm using my ruler to scrape off the paper. And are we done? No, we aren't, because we still want to get this sort of weaving pattern in there. So there are some more cuts to do. I really wanted to create the impression of a 3-dimensional weaving. Now time to cut off the head. Here I'm using my hand plane to get some chamfers on there, because these edges were pretty sharp. By chamfering them, you will protect your hands, and you will also make the tool a lot more sturdy. Now it's on to the gluing. I'm not sure if the glue is really necessary, because wedging the handle in there will secure it very tightly. But I applied the glue to close any gaps, because I wanted to make the joint look pristine. Now here are the wedges. These are made of beech. The cool thing about beech is that the end grain of beech somehow looks like cherry when oiled. So you will see this later, it looks like it's the same piece of wood. Now I'm applying some painter's tape to make sure that I have a slight gap when cutting off the excess material on the top. So not to cut or to leave any saw marks in my hammerhead. Planing it off, and then some sanding. The handle is still quite uncomfortable to grip, so I will give it a lot more ergonomical shape. So for bringing it into the rough shape, I'm going to use a set of different chisels. I could have also used a rasp, but rasps also leave so much dirt and dust behind, and chisels are just a lot cleaner to work with. And after the chisel work, I remembered that I already built a spoke shave. So here we are with the spoke shave. I also have some video footage on how I made the spoke shave, but I didn't have the time yet to cut it. But I will upload it in a few weeks maybe. And on to the last and my favorite step every time. It's oiling. So the first thing I do here is applying some linseed oil. And after this, some antique wax, and after that, some beeswax to really polish it. So this is the linseed oil. And it really breathes life into the cherry. Now here you can see how perfectly these beech wedges and the cherry wood fit together. The oil also really makes the carving pop out. Now then the oil is dried, I will apply some antique wax. This wax has a brown color, and these brown color like sets in the grain and also in all these small little dents and cuts that were left from the carving, and gives us this antique and sort of vintagey look. And now it's just some beeswax to polish it. You can really see how the walnut, especially the walnut, gets this satin gloss. This wax also has a very distinctive smell, and it is sort of connected to this great feeling of personal success when I finish one of these woodworking projects, and then I enjoy in applying it every single time. Okay, so let's head over to the final presentation. I'd love to get your feedback on this project. It was just a simple mallet, which I tried to upgrade with my first attempt in carving. I'm super happy with the results. If you have any questions, any feedback, anything that I could improve, no matter what, just leave me a comment or write me an email. I'd be super happy to exchange ideas and thoughts with you, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks, and until next time.